All right, let's dive into one of history's most tense family reunions. Now, on the surface, this looks like a straightforward story about two estranged brothers finally making peace. But if you read between the lines, you'll find a masterclass in psychological warfare, diplomacy, and, well, brilliant deception. So, picture this. 20 years ago, Jacob tricked his brother Esau out of his birthright and his blessing, and then he literally fled for his life. Now, he's finally coming home, but he's just gotten some terrifying news. Esau is riding out to meet him, and he's not coming alone. He has 400 men with him. You know, that doesn't sound like a welcome party, that sounds like an army.
Jacob is absolutely convinced he's leading his entire family into an ambush. So his strategy isn't about hope, it's pure damage control. First, he divides his entire camp in two, thinking, hey, if one gets attacked, maybe the other can escape. Then he sends these huge waves of extravagant gifts ahead, hoping to soften Esau up. And then, as Esau gets closer, he arranges his family in a very specific and very telling formation.
And this is where it gets really strategic. I mean, look at this. It's a clear hierarchy. This is basically a human shield, arranged by affection. First up are the maids and their children, the most expendable. Then comes Leah, his less favored wife, and her children. And way in the back, in the safest possible position, he puts the wife he truly loves, Rachel, and their son, Joseph.
To really get what's going on here, we need a guide. And for us, that guide is Rashi, a French rabbi from the 11th century. He was an absolute master at reading the text and noticing these tiny little inconsistencies or strange phrases and just asking, wait a second, why is it written this way? And his commentary? Well, it reveals the story beneath the story.
So, Rashi zeroes in on this one little detail. The text says, and last, Joseph and Rachel came forward. Now, in every other pairing, the mother came before her kids. But here, Joseph steps in front of his mother. Why? It seems so minor, right? But for Rashi, there are no minor details.
And what he finds is just incredible. This one action tells us so much about Joseph's character, even as a young man. According to Rashi, Joseph sees this powerful, potentially violent man, Esau, approaching, and he starts thinking strategically. He knows his mother is a beautiful woman, and he's afraid that this wicked Esau might desire her, so what does he do? He physically stands in front of her to block Esau's line of sight. Clearly, the apple doesn't fall far from the strategic tree in this family.
So after all this prep, all this fear and strategy, the actual meeting seems almost anticlimactic. The text says Esau ran to Jacob, he embraced him, fell on his neck, kissed him, and they both wept. It looks like a perfect Hollywood ending, right? A simple, emotional reunion after 2 decades apart. All is forgiven.
But if we've learned anything so far, it's that the surface story is never the whole story. The physical actions, the hugging and crying, that's one thing. But the dialogue that comes next? Oh, that is a chess match. Every single word is chosen with surgical precision, and every word has a double meaning.
Listen to this. Jacob just lays it on thick. He looks at his brother, the man he was sure was coming to kill him, and he says this. It sounds like the most profound, humble thing you could possibly say. He's basically groveling, comparing his scary brother to a divine being. But Rashi reads this completely differently.
This is just amazing. Rashi explains that literally the night before, Jacob wrestled with an angel, and Jewish tradition says this angel was the guardian angel of Esau himself. So when Jacob says, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, he's not just flattering him. No, he's sending a message. He's saying, I just fought your spiritual representative, an actual angel, and I survived. Don't you think for a second I can't handle you. What sounds like a humble plea is actually a brilliant power move.
And the verbal sparring doesn't stop there. The next round in this fight, it's all about that massive gift of livestock Jacob sent. Esau tries to refuse it, and this isn't just about being polite. This is another round of negotiation. If Esau accepts the gift, it's a sign of forgiveness. If he refuses, the tension stays right where it is.
Okay, you have to listen really closely to the specific words they use here. It's just a single word difference, but it reveals everything about who they are. Esau says, I have revev, which means I have abundance, or I have a lot. It's the language of someone who measures their worth by what they own. I have a lot, but hey, I could always use more.
But Jacob's response is on a whole other level. He says, I have kol, which means I have everything. He's not saying he owns the whole world. He's saying I have all that I need. And Rashi points out that this just highlights the fundamental difference between these two brothers. Esau speaks the language of pride and endless wanting, while Jacob speaks the language of contentment, of being spiritually whole. And with that, Jacob wins the argument, and Esau finally takes the gift.
So the tension finally seems to break. Esau, acting all friendly now, makes what sounds like a generous offer. He says, "Let's get going, and I'll travel with you." But for Jacob, this might be the most dangerous offer yet. Traveling with Esau and his 400 men, that puts him and his entire family completely at their mercy. He has to get out of this, but without offending Esau all over again.
So Jacob does what he does best. He comes up with this super polite, totally reasonable sounding excuse. He says, "Oh, my kids are frail, the flocks are nursing, I just can't keep up with your pace." And then he makes a very specific promise. "You go on ahead to your home base in Seir, and I'll catch up with you there." Sounds plausible, right?
Yeah, except it's a complete lie. The moment Esau was out of sight, Jacob turns his entire camp around and heads in the opposite direction, toward a place called Succoth. He never had any intention of going to Seir. So was he just a liar? Well, Rashi gives this a mind-blowing twist. He says the promise wasn't really a lie. It was a prophecy. Jacob will come to Esau in Seir, but only at the end of days in the Messianic era, when good finally triumphs.
And just like that, Jacob does it. Through a combination of strategic gifts, veiled threats, deep psychological insight, and yes, an outright lie, he successfully navigates the single most dangerous encounter of his life. He has survived his brother.
Now, after this whole ordeal, the Bible uses this one specific, really powerful Hebrew word to describe his condition. It says Jacob arrived shalem. Now, this word is often translated as safe or peacefully, but its root really means whole or complete. So what does it actually mean that he arrived whole?
Well, Rashi, of course, breaks this down for us, and he says being whole wasn't just one thing, it was three. First, he was whole in his body. That limp he got from wrestling the angel had miraculously healed. Second, he was whole in his wealth. Even after giving away a fortune to Esau, God had blessed him so much his finances were completely intact. And third, and maybe most importantly, he was whole in his spirit. After 20 years away from home, he hadn't forgotten his learning. He was physically, financially, and spiritually complete.
So what's the big picture here? This wasn't a simple story of forgiveness. It was a story of survival. Jacob faced down two massive threats, his deceitful uncle Laban and his vengeful brother Esau. And he came out of it not just alive, but whole. And he did it using every tool he had, humility as a tactic, wealth as a shield, and language as a weapon.
And this really just shows the power of reading beneath the surface. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What interactions in our own lives, what conversations or events that seem simple on the outside are actually packed with hidden strategies, deeper meanings, and a whole other story just waiting to be understood.